What's good, everyone? Make sure you hit the like button on your way in. Today, we're going to be talking about how ICE agents may be required to put on body cameras, and in my estimation, I don't think the article is going to get to this, but as a former law enforcement executive, I am in full favor of these individuals having to show their faces wearing name tags and body camera footage. There's too much going on with this nonsense, just absolutely too much. And so I really wanted to address this issue right here. Let me close some tabs up here. My computer is running kind of slow here. I don't know why it does this. I don't know why it does this. I'm close some stuff up here. All right, so let's get into it here. So the first, I'm going to put this on the screen here, and this is judge wants immigration agents in Chicago area to wear cameras after clashes with public. Listen, there is too much indiscretion. There's too much non accountability, lack of accountability. We understand what's going on with ICE. If you believe the reports that I have read about individuals, being lost, they don't know where they are. Not families can't find them. These people who are being targeted by ICE officials, Immigration Customs Enforcement, and if any of that is true, if they are deporting people and putting them on planes to areas where no one else is able to find them, then this is a problem. This is a problem. And this is a former law enforcement officer speaking to you. And this picture here says federal law enforcement officers stand guard in the open gate of the fence built on Beach Street outside the Broadview Ice processing facility in suburban Broadview Tuesday. Uh, some of them still have masks on. Let me just get into this for a second here. The experiment that I always talked about two experiments. I probably talked about this before, but just bear me out here. Two experiments go into the heart of what I would call, we get these psychological profiles about how people interact when they are given power and authority. One is the Stanley Milgram experiment. You can go Google this. I'm not going to go into all that. But the second one that I really want to talk about is the Stanford prison experiment. Stanford, as in like the college or place in California, STAN, as in Nancy Stanford prison experiment. Go look up that. In that particular case, they put college students from Stanford University, took them, put them in, made half of a group prisoners, half of another group, half of the other side of the group made them the guards of the prison, gave them mirrored glasses, name tags, the whole regalia, right? And these are ordinary, just voluntary participants at a university. If memory serves me correctly, it was supposed to run the experiment for 2 weeks, right? So they were supposed to arrest individuals on the campus, bring them to a facility. The guards was to bring them to a facility, process them, and the guards could be just as vicious without physical punishment as possible. Make up different types of things. They took away people's mattresses, took away in order to punish people and get them to comply, took away their mattresses, took away their buckets, or refused to empty their buckets as they would go to the bathroom in, and just a complete psychological nightmare on the part of those who were the guards and of the guards, and of course those who were portraying the prisoners in these experiments began to cry. They began to set things on fire. It was just a crazy phenomenon looking into how the human psyche can be revealed. And when I taught law enforcement classes, when I taught a class called human behavior, in fact, many of the classes I talked about, I always brought up these two particular stories because I didn't want officers to do exactly what these ICE officers are doing. Let me say that again. I did not want ICE, I did not want our police officers in my police department, those who I was training, those who I would have to one day supervise, to become like these ICE officers, where they have no accountability, seemingly from their higher ups, have no face masks, So they're unidentifiable, no name tags. What unit are they from? Who's their supervisor? Are they filling out use of force compliance laws? Do they have the federal agents? Do they have use of force compliance? All, all this different type of stuff that law enforcement has overwhelmingly pushed for in order to create a better relationship between the community and the police. Sir Robert Peel, the police are the community, and the community is the police. Right? That was always the mantra. This is also why you shouldn't have the military turning their sights, their war powers, their wanting to their ability to break things and kill people. You shouldn't put that on the public. Um, you should not put that in the public. Should not put that in the public. You should not be aiming their resources, their firepower, their prowess for what they do, destroy things, hurt people, onto the public. The police are trained in de-escalation tactics and softer techniques in order. Are they perfect? Not by a long shot. I get that, but this is just crazy what's going on here. Absolutely crazy. So now this judge is saying we got to do something about this. All right. So let's read this story by that's come from AP Chicago. This is by Christine Fernando. Troubled by clashes between agents and the public, a judge on Thursday said she will require federal immigration officers in Chicago area to wear body-worn body cameras. She also summoned a senior official to court next week to discuss an enforcement operation that resulted in more than 1,000 arrests. This is because they have quotas. This is because they have quotas. Let me make sure my sound is up here. Again, we've known for a long time within the law enforcement community, while some departments may have them technically, you cannot have quotas. U.S. District Judge Sarah Ellis said she was a little startled after seeing TV images of street confrontations that involved tear gas and other tactics during an immigration crackdown by President Donald Trump's administration. I live in Chicago. If folks haven't noticed, Ellis said, and I'm not blind, right? Separately, hours later, a federal appeals court ruled against the Trump administration and said a lower court's contemporary ban on deploying the National Guard to assist immigration officers in Illinois would stay in place while the government pursues an appeal. This is absolute craziness that's going on here. Absolute craziness from a law enforcement perspective. Community efforts to oppose U.S. immigration and customs enforcement have ramped up in Chicago, where neighborhood groups have assembled to monitor ICE activity and film incidents involving agents. More than 1,000 immigrants have been arrested since September. What are you going to do with all these people? You're going to stick them in a warehouse? You got to feed them. You got to transport them back. And if memory I don't know if they're going to mention here, but if memory serves me correctly, I was reading another article talking about all these different ICE raids that they were doing. Right, they're rappelling out of helicopters and saying "F these kids" and zip tying little kids and bringing them outside and this all this kind of stuff. Right, and then after all that, they out of the I don't remember the exact number. I think it was like 139 people that were arrested or something like that. Like 10 of them were wanted felons or something. Black Hawk helicopter people. You got guys rappelling out of helicopters. They're trying. I agree with the assessment that they're trying to normalize this for the midterms. They're trying to get us to say this is normal, right? It's okay for in the city streets for Black Hawk helicopters to be hovering above us at 2 a.m. and repelling out and kicking in people's doors. Even though as a result of the Breonna Taylor situation, most departments have gotten away from these types of crazy raids at all hours of the morning. An immigration enforcement building in Broadview outside Chicago has been the site of regular protests. The Trump administration has tried to deploy guard troops, in part to patrol at the Broadview location, but the strategy was halted on October 9th for at least 2 weeks by a different federal judge. Different judges are saying this is crazy. Ellis last week said agents in the area must wear badges. Thank you, Ellis. Judge Ellis, thank you. And she banned them from using certain riot control techniques against peaceful protesters and journalists. That's not going far enough. Badges, name tags, and get those masks off. You don't want to be doxxed. Don't do crazy stuff. I'm not excusing And I'm not insensitive to the idea that these people might be doxxed. And I'm not for that. But the respect, I always taught that the respect for the police starts with how the police act. Starts with how the police act. And if you're going in these situations, going against in these places, talking about this kind of stuff, instigating this type of thing, I should say, instigating it, then you want to say, oh, well, they're going to dox us. Police officers have been wearing name tags because they had to treat the community a certain way. And this administration has gotten away from Robert Peel's principles, his 9 principles. I'm having concerns about my order being followed, the judge said. I'm adding that all agents who are operating in in Operation Midway Blitz are to wear body-worn cameras, and they are to be on, Ellis said, referring to the government's name for the crackdown. U.S. Justice Department Attorney Sean Skidlitsky laid blame with the one-sided and selectively edited media reports. He also said it wouldn't be possible to immediately distribute cameras. Well, then you can't. Then you're barred from doing it. You should be barred from doing anything until you can get the cameras. I mean, you can have them in a week. I'm sure that there's some place somewhere they can order these cameras. You knew this was coming. You knew you were in law enforcement. Everybody else has got to wear cameras. I understand that. I would not be expecting the agents to wear body-worn cameras they do not have, Ellis said, adding that the details could be worked out later. Now that could take forever. You got to set a time limit with that. We give you 2 weeks, 2 weeks a month. It's something, something reasonable. One body camera where even if there's a team of guys, whatever, each team has 10 guys or something like that. One guy's just standing back, videotaping everything, audio and video. Until everybody can get one, there's workarounds. There's workarounds. Even if it's a handheld camera. DHS will continue to oppose all efforts to vilify law enforcement and prop up the cause of violent rioters, said Tricia McLaughlin, spokesperson for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. We're a court to enter such an order in the future, that would have been an extreme act of judicial activism. Well, I don't have a problem with that. Ellis said cameras would provide entrance to back up how agents handle confrontation with protesters. And don't forget, a lot of times these cameras actually go in the officer's favor. I was an IA. I had to review body worn cameras. People came in and said, this officer said this, he did that, he did this, he said that. Look at the camera. None of that happened. Officer was completely professional the entirety of the time. Ellis said the field director of the enforcement effort must appear in court Monday. Governor J.B. Pritzker praised the judge's ruling, saying the government's statement about arrests and other incidents, including last month's fatal shooting of a suburban Chicago man, has often been inaccurate. They clearly lie about what goes on, he told reporters. It's hard for us to know right away what the truth is. In 2024, Immigration and Customs enforcement began deploying about 1,600 body cameras to agents assigned to enforcement and removal operations. At the time, officials said they would be provided to agents in Baltimore, Philadelphia, Washington, Buffalo, New York, and Detroit. Other Homeland Security Department agencies require some agents to wear cameras. U.S. Customs and Border Protection has released body-worn body camera video when force has been used by its agents or officers. Well, that's good that they've been providing it. It's released body-worn cameras. Well, that's good that they've been releasing it. Earlier this week, Cook County judge barred ICE from arresting people at courthouses in Chicago and the suburbs. This is crazy. This is crazy. This is crazy. This is crazy. All right. So that's that story. Listen, keep the agitation going. Don't provoke the officers, obviously, but do what you got to do. And I'm with you. Whatever it means for me. There's not much of that going around here, but I certainly would like to go would be involved in these protests. So they do come here. I'm gonna because this is crazy, right? They're embarrassing law enforcement, they're taking us back, and of course, it's the purpose and the point, right? To take us back to a place of all this, white hegemony and just craziness, right? So speaking of all that, right? Let's move on to the voting rights. Let's move on to the voting rights and all this, right? So let me see here. Put this on screen, share screen, Supreme Court. This comes from a lady's channel, JJ Legal. I am actually going to reach out to her, see if I can get her on the show. I've been wanting to have a lawyer on for a little bit. I've reached out to a couple of people, and they're busy or whatever, so I get it. Supreme Court hearing on GOP-led challenge to Voting Rights Act. I've heard a lot of people talking about this and what's it mean in particular for Black folks. So let's see. And I've watched about 5 minutes of this. I said I'll decide to react to it. I'm going to speed it up a little bit, claim fair use. We're going to do this for an educational type of purpose here. We're going to do this for educational type of purpose. So Supreme Court to hear GOP-led challenge to voter rights. Here we go.
The Voting Rights Act. They're hearing oral arguments today, and based on the questions being asked by the majority conservatives on the Supreme Court right now, the legal expert.
I do have it sped up, so she's not just talking like that. I know some people can't hear it that well, but I kind of want to get through this because there's something else I want to play as well. So it's on 1.5 speed. Forgive me if it's too fast, but you can go over to her channel and watch the full thing there.
Or analyzing and put the TVs together, says it looks like they're done with it. Now, this is why it's dangerous. I'm going to give you a quick, briefly rundown on the two cases that have been consolidated into one that's part of these oral arguments today, the flaws of the arguments, what they're trying to do, and then I'm going to talk about
slowed it down a little bit here.
Real life implications of why I think they shouldn't rule the way people say they're going to rule, but notwithstanding that, how I think that's going to backfire. So I'm going to go a deeper dive in why I think it's going to backfire in the private communities, but I'm going to give you like the broad overlay of why I think it's going to backfire in this video, because there's some things that you got to keep to ourselves. And so if you're the private community, you can listen to the full deep dive there. But let's get started really quick. Okay, so it's two cases. So Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act of 1964, I think, essentially acknowledged that during the 60s, the southern states deliberately tried to intimidate and deny the Black U.S. citizens' right to vote. And because they couldn't trust them, they that act requires that they actually carve out specific 2 districts so they can have a vote, at least 1 or 2, so they can have a vote, majority Black, with the idea being that usually if it's consolidated Black district and a Black person runs, they're going to win, and that way they'll get some voice, because the thinking back then is just white people just would not vote for Black candidates. But if you have a consolidated, concentrated block of Black residents, they would vote for Black candidate, and that'll give them a voice. And that Black candidate, when they reach the Congress, they'll look out for their interests that's specific to them, especially given the racial climate of the time.
So I would just disagree that they didn't try to intimidate. They did intimidate, but we'll continue on here.
So that's one case. Non-Blacks, after Louisiana drew up an extra district, one and the next one, so they're going to be denied their racial discriminated against them. Anyway, so that's the one case. The second case is there was a challenge as to whether or not traditionally, when there is a problem, nonprofits and civil rights groups are allowed to bring a case on behalf of the community. So there's a second case that would say that rather than nonprofits, it would take away the rights of nonprofit groups of other people and leave it in the hand of the Department of Justice. So we all know if that was in the hand of this Department of Justice, what would happen to that? That would be the end of it. So that
would be the standing. We want to take away the standing. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so these are all, I'm trying to piece together exactly what she's saying in line with other reports that I've read, and this is talking about the standing. I think this is what she's saying. They want to take people's standing. So these different watch groups could take legal action on their behalf and try to do it for the community. They're saying, no, you got to have standing. You have to be the victim of some type of harm, which is crazy.
That's a problem. So those are the two things that have been consolidated into one argument. Now, obviously, even though, despite the fact I'm hearing bits and pieces of the oral arguments, and I acknowledge and I recognize and I accept what the legal experts are saying, but it's interesting. Here's the flaws, not just because what the non-Blacks are arguing in the portion of the case saying that their rights are being discriminated against is like, wait a minute. So you're saying that in an area state where you have a voice, like you have 8 out of the 10 seats, and you not being allowed to have the 9th and 10th seat makes discrimination against you. How did make that make sense? You have a voice. So I guess anyway. So, and the other thing regarding I already mentioned it, taking away the rights of nonprofits and civil rights groups to do this. It's kind of like you allowing an instance when we have the instance now when there's a highly politicized Department of Justice, as with the Trump administration right now, which is they're crazy. You now make it impossible for anyone to challenge it when it's clearly obvious that there's efforts to disenfranchise groups, and we've already seen Trump try to.
And not just the legislative body, obviously, they have these people have all of the levers of governmental power, all three branches of government: the judicial, the executive, and the legislative. And this is an issue. This is an issue, and this is why they're railroading things. And Roland Martin, I know, has often talked about Shelby v. Holder, when they continue to peel back these civil rights acts, and it's all aimed and targeted at disenfranchising 13% of the population, which isn't a lot.
To steal votes in Georgia, and he's actually was being tried for that. And we've seen him asked the state of Texas and other states to gerrymander to deny people their rights, specifically going after black neighbors. So you are now, your Supreme Court, in an environment being asked, saying we do not need this anymore. And you have an environment where the current administration is actively trying to disenfranchise black residents in the South. So the timing couldn't be any worse to say that we don't need this anymore. Crazy. We're also in a time frame when, in this past weekend, that this oral argument, within the past 3 days, this oral argument is being heard. We have young Republicans, which is the next generation of Republicans, caught on group chats saying racist, sexist, anti-Semitic statements, using the N-word multiple times, and talking about the gas chambers, like being really, really gross. And this is the next generation.
I don't know why they keep calling it young. I read about this particular story. Why and these people are not young. They're between the ages of 21 and 40. I mean, you would when I hear young, I think they're talking about 15 and 16-year-old, maybe some young up and coming Republicans who want to join the Republican Party. They're 16, 17, 18 years old. No, these people are 21, 27, 31, all the way up to 40. They're in this group chat. These people are grown, have kids. You can be 40 and have a grandkid technically. I mean, what are we talking about here? Right? And so it's always this idea that we should deny them. Always this idea that we should deny them. What their thoughts. Let me pause here for a second here. All right, so let's dig into the story just a little bit here. So this comes from the Hill here. So this is JD. The Views slams JD Vance. We're going to listen to exactly what the Vice President of the United States said about these racist texts. And keep in mind that this man, JD Vance, is actually married to a woman of Indian descent, Southeast Asian or South Asian or Asian descent. Let me just say, I don't know, of Asian descent, Indian woman, and he's got biracial kids. So he's got to explain to his kids and to his wife, when these young Republicans are making these jokes and etc., that it's just young kids and they don't matter, and we don't want to hold them against them from the rest of their life. Yeah, we do. That's how you stop people from doing it. Here we go.
Focusing on what kids are saying in a group chat. Grow up. I'm sorry. Focus on the real issues. Don't focus on what kids say in group chats. The reality is that kids do stupid things, especially young boys. They tell edgy, offensive jokes. Like, that's what kids do. And I really don't want us to grow up in a country where a kid telling a stupid joke, telling a very offensive stupid joke, is cause to ruin their lives. And at some point, we're all going to have to say, enough of this BS.
But there has been some pushback on Vance.
Mother Jones, no one in the GOP Hitler chat was a kid. By scathing public records and media reports, Mother Jones determined the ages of the 8 of the 11 participants in the chat. They appeared to range from 24 to 35. Ages for 3 other participants, Bobby Walker, Marta Bartles, and Rachel Hope, were not publicly available.
Vance's characterization of the group chat members as kids. Mother Jones reports that 8 of the 11 members of that chat were between the ages of 24 to 35.
That fact did not escape.
Let me see here. I don't want to play all that, right? These guys talking about these people, right? So this again is downplaying. How does this man explain this? Right? They're making these offensive jokes about obviously about black folks, but about the Nazi and their Holocaust that was perpetrated against the Jewish people, about women, all this different type of craziness, right? And this guy, the Vice President of the United States, is saying they call them kids, first of all. Second of all, saying that it shouldn't be held against them for the rest of their life. Why? Because they are tired of making jokes when they're in the 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, making these jokes, and then want to run for Congress when they're 40, and people are digging this up. And it should be dug up. I'm standing very clearly that it should be dug up, right? right? Don't make the jokes. How about this, JD Vance and everyone else who thinks like that? How about you train your kids not to make those jokes? Because again, JD Vance has mixed biracial kids, and he's going to have to explain to his wife, to his kids about these jokes when they come to him and say, mommy, daddy, I was in the locker room at let's just say 15, maybe he's in high school, and these kids want to jump me and they call me an N word or some other slur from concerning the Indian people, right? Saying N words, right? All this different type of stuff, right? And now JD Vance is just going to say, "Oh, listen, they're just kids. Just brush it off. It's okay. Toughen up." This man has a deplorable and despicable understanding of the psychological damage and the harm that is done. And we have done so much work in this country to overcome that, to do something about it, and he just doesn't care. Just doesn't care. Just doesn't care. Crazy. And this woman has to go home and deal with that particular type of nonsense. Let's get back to this. Let's see here. Supreme Court voting rights. Here we go. We'll get back to this.
Next generation. So if the argument was like we're so far advanced that we don't need anymore, this is the youth, and we say youth are age 18 to 40, so they're really not that young. But this is the next generation saying we're ready to continue the racist practices that we've had from our four ancestors. So that's another sign.
Because no one is stopping them. Because people like JD are not saying no, this is unacceptable in our party. His only message is we don't want to hold it against them, blaming the victims. Don't hold it against them in 10 years when they're running for Congress.
Not ready. And then you have an administration beyond what he's trying to do in gerrymander. He's rolling back, taking us back to the actively denying grants to deny grants based on anti-DI because they mentioned the fact that the person they're being celebrated is black, live in a black neighborhood. Like, it's active racism. They've had judges, Judge Lamberth and the district court. They've had Judge Williams. They've had judges at the judges, Judge Edward Chen, say that the policies are really based on racism. Like, their policies are actively.
The judge rules. U.S. judge rules racist cancellation of NIH grants null and void. Cancellation. U.S. judge rules racist cancellation of NIH grants null and void. I don't know what that sentence means. I don't know what that sentence means. Oh, sorry.
Judges at the judges, Judge Edward Chen, say that the policies.
Judge tears into ICE Barbie in blistering ruling on deportation plot. Yeah. Now that a little more, I don't know. The other one seemed to be written in a different place. So I'm not understanding. I wouldn't understand that. Anyway, so this one, the judge tears into ICE Barbie in blistering ruling on deport. Yeah, because they're enacting racist policies here.
Are really based on racism. Like, their policies are actively racist. So you have an administration currently that's actively racist. The youth in their party is actively, obviously racist. And then you have his attempt to disenfranchise people. How, pray tell, can you say that we no longer need any laws to protect communities of color, and particularly black communities, when that law was specifically for blacks? The law had nothing to do, didn't say, even though 14th Amendment has been expanded to include and protect other groups, it started off to stop specific type of discrimination, which has not gone away. So we're not there yet when whites can say, oh, we're being discriminated against because it's protected other groups over the years. Let's go back to the origins. The origination, what was it meant for is to protect that group, and that specific group is being attacked right now. So it makes no sense whatsoever the Supreme Court should take that back. But this conservative Supreme Court is just on one because it's let Donald Trump do a lot of bullshit that's cost a lot of lives, that's been destructive, that's caused people to not even be here anymore in terms of taking food off of tarmacs, causing people to lose their jobs, causing people to be deported to countries that are not their own, where they're tortured, and and all of it unlawfully. So they don't care. So I don't have any faith in them in keeping this. And if they do keep it, they'll still dilute it. So I have no faith in them whatsoever. Now, with that saying, I still think this can backfire. So here's how it can backfire royally.
I'm definitely interested in this.
It can backfire because, along with all the different ways I believe the Trump administration have overplayed their hand to extent that they believe they have some sort of mandate to just go through, run a tear, destroy democracy, uproot lives and families, and be essentially brutes, Neanderthal, like emotionally crazy, the way they've been destroying all sorts of things and eroding their bases. He's gone all in. He's gone ham. It's crazy. He's deeply unpopular. He's underwater, and they're crazy. So for the Supreme Court to do this one more thing, essentially, it's kind of like that's going to activate, hopefully, the 90 million people did not vote. We always say 77 million people voted for Donald Trump, allegedly, reportedly. Some people don't believe that. 75 million for Kamala, but 90 million people sat out. And so if the Democrats or just anyone can activate even a fraction of those 90 million. And this could be part of it, the reason why they say, look how much they're trying to take away your vote. Because no matter what people say in terms of disenfranchisement, there is still a segment of the population in the South that are being disenfranchised, and there are active attempts to roll back early voting, roll back mail-in voting, roll back more polling places, and all the different ways to make it easier to vote, to be registered, like motor voter laws. There's attempts by the Republicans traditionally to disenfranchise them under the guise of voter fraud, which doesn't have exist. And examples of voter frauds, usually when you see them, it's usually very, very small, and there's been like Republicans. And there's someone right now serving time in jail for voter fraud who's Republican, who's begging Trump to save her. Anyway, so to the extent that that's not really, an issue, it will piss enough people off, or that'd be a nice way, a nice campaign to circle a campaign around that. It's like they're trying to take away your vote, and they're actively removing it, and they're trying to take you back to the other side. The same way Donald Trump was able to build a coalition of people who are low propensity voters, but are more likely to vote for him, is MAGA base in 2016, and he picked some Gen Z boys, people who are just looking for something to believe in. He formed a correlation, folks who don't normally vote, and he got them.
Okay, I'm not going to play the rest of that. So I think that her thesis is that it's going to activate the 90 million people who did not vote. And shame on you if you don't vote. Shame on you. Shame on you. Either you voted for this not mess, or you voted with your couch and still got this mess. It's absolute mess. Absolute mess. So I'm actually going to reach out to her, see if I can have her on the show. All right, so I'm going to play this last one here. We'll play a couple of minutes of this, and this comes from the Congressional Black Caucus and their response to what's going on with the Supreme Court and this particular law that's going on here. So let's listen to what the members of the Black Caucus say. And I got to speed this one up because her cadence was really slow.
Everybody ready? Good afternoon. Good afternoon. And thank you all in the press for joining us today. I'm Congresswoman Yvette D. Clarke of the Congressional Black Caucus, chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, and proud representative of New York's 9th Congressional District, located in Brooklyn, New York. I want to begin by thanking my colleagues in the Congressional Black Caucus for their leadership, their commitment, and their presence here this afternoon. Earlier today, the Supreme Court began oral arguments in Louisiana v. Callis, a case that places Section 2 of the Voting Rights squarely in the crosshairs of this court's conservative supermajority. Let me be clear, this case threatens to dismantle one of the last remaining safeguards against racial discrimination in our electoral system, and the stakes could not be higher. We are standing on the precipice of what could be a substantial blow to one of the most important civil rights laws in our nation's history. For every step we take toward building a more and just and inclusive democracy, there are those hell-bent on dragging us 2 steps backward. Republicans are attempting to run the table with every dirty trick in order to cement power because their policies have failed. Combined with Republicans' mid-decade gerrymandering, a ruling gutting Section 2 could help them secure an additional 27 safe Republican United States House seats, at least 19 directly tied to the loss of Section 2. A ruling of this magnitude would have wide-ranging implications on Black and minority representation in the Congress. Let's talk the facts. In 2024, Louisiana adopted a congressional map that complied with the Voting Rights Act. It created 2 majority Black districts out of 6, a long overdue correction considering that the Black Louisianians make up nearly a third of the state's population. The previous map had only 1. That new map was not handed over freely. It was fought for, organized for, litigated for, and ultimately won through tireless effort and advocacy by Black communities across the state. But now, a group of self-described non-African American voters is turning that hard-won victory into a constitutional attack. They are arguing that the map intended to remedy racial discrimination is somehow discriminatory against them. Their claim, and the simple fact that it is being entertained by the highest court in the land, is not only absurd, but it's dangerous. The opponents of Louisiana's new map and the state itself are seeking to twist this case into a weapon that could gut the ability to challenge racially discriminatory maps nationwide. This is an affront to every community that has fought, marched, and bled for the right to vote. The late Congressman John Lewis said, "The right to vote is precious. It is almost sacred. It is the most powerful nonviolent tool we have in a democracy," end quote. Right now, that tool is under threat. Fair representation is under threat. This is not just a legal fight. This is a fight for the future of our democracy. We will not give up. We will fight. We will continue fighting in the courts, in the Congress, and in our communities against any attempt to silence our voices and dismantle our power. To those who seek to drag us backward, know this: the Congressional Black Caucus stands united. We will protect the sacred right to vote, and we will defend the promise of democracy for every American. It is now my honor to bring to speak at this time the gentleman from Louisiana, Rep. Troy Carter, first Vice Chair of the Congressional Black Caucus.
Thank you very much to our illustrious Chairwoman, Yvette Clarke, for convening this important press conference and for your steadfast leadership on this issue and all other issues. Today, the Supreme Court again heard oral arguments in Louisiana v. Calais, a case that could dismantle what remains of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. At stake is whether one-third of Louisiana's population, my home state, Black Louisianians, will continue to have an opportunity to elect representatives of their choice, or whether hard-won progress will be erased under the guise of so-called colorblind politics. For decades, the courts,
So-called colorblind.
conservative majority has chipped away at this landmark civil rights law. Now Section 2, which prohibits voting practices that discriminate based on race, is on the chopping block. If struck down, Louisiana could lose its 2-majority Black congressional district, silencing Black voters' voices in Washington. Critics claim that the VRA is no longer needed, but history and data tells quite a different story. Louisiana's colorblind poll taxes, literacy test, and Jim Crow jury laws were tools of exclusion. Further, though Black people make up 1/3 of the population, only 5 Louisianians have served in the U.S. House out of 171. That's not equal representation. That's a travesty.
That's right.
Without protections like Section 2, Black communities will lose power. Their concerns are sidelined and our democracy is weakened. We've seen what happens when discriminatory systems go unchecked. Louisiana's non-unanimous jury rule, born of Jim Crow era state constitution, stood for over a century until black lawmakers, for which I was proud to be a co-sponsor of that bill when I was in the state Senate.
That is crazy. How long was that? The non-majority, non-unanimous, I should say, convictions was guaranteed for Black folks to be talking about weaponization. That was a guarantee for Black folks to be penalized.
Finally changed its deep racist roots. That's power. And the necessity of representation remains strong. We must be at the table. We must have a voice. The Voting Rights Act once united lawmakers through both parties. In 2006, it passed Congress without a single dissenting Senate vote. We need that spirit again at the Supreme Court and amongst our Republican colleagues. Back in March, I had an opportunity to visit Selma, Alabama, with my dear sister, Terry Sewell, and many others. Congressman Jim Clyburn, Chairwoman Clarke, and many other members of Congress were in that number. We walked across the very bridge where John Lewis and Amelia Boynton were beaten to forge a more perfect union. 60 years ago, their blood gave birth to the Voting Rights Act, and we must not let that sacrifice be in vain today.
That's right.
This is a defining moment. This is our civil rights moment of 2025. Americans can honor its democratic promise, or it can retreat to the past, where some voices simply were not heard, or at a minimum, didn't count. Section 2 is not a relic. It's reality. It's as needed today as it was in 1965. Some might even argue that it's more needed, because we see the attempts under this Project 2025 to reverse the actions of gain, to take away the freedoms and the rights of Americans. Some today, others tomorrow. We must be united to push back against this attempt to destroy our democracy, to undo laws that have given protection and fairness to the American people. Congressional Black Caucus is leading that way. We stand firm in this defining moment. We stand firm saying that it is a living promise that this democracy belongs to all of us. We must defend it in Louisiana and across the country, because this is our battle. Regardless of your race, your background, your zip code, or your socioeconomic status, we are in this together, and we are not going to retreat.
Right. Thank you.
Next, I'll bring up the esteemed leader from Alabama, Representative Terry Sewell.
All right, so I'm going to leave it out there. You can go over and watch the rest of that. But listen, this is an age-old problem that doesn't seem to be going away. That we just can't get away from. So, from ICE raids to judges, in so many words, they're allowing these individuals to run around with masks on, run around with no name tags, going after brown people, to the Voting Rights Act. Racism abounds. Racism abounds. So let me know your thoughts and your opinions. Hit me in the comment section. Much love and peace.